doesn't matter what I believe. All that matters, I mean, it does in the sense that I've come to believe the Shroud is authentic, but you ready for this?
Yeah.
We examined the Shroud in 1978.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 1995, 17 years later, that the last piece of evidence came in that finally allowed me to accept the Shroud as authentic.
Oh,
So
wow.
I didn't rush into this.
No, you didn't.
Nope, it took me a long time. I didn't even want to be a part of it at the beginning.
Right,
I
yeah.
thought, well, this has nothing to do with me. Why am I going to be here? But you know, the man upstairs has a bigger plan, and he doesn't fill us in on the details except on a need-to-know basis. And
I agree.
it was obvious to me that my purpose in the world of the Shroud was far less to make those photographs in 1978 than to bring this information to a broader public via the internet 20 years later. And so that's really what my role was. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. And I kept saying, what's a nice Jewish boy like me involved with this? You know?
Right,
Now, and do you know what the answer to that question is? What's a nice Jewish boy like me doing involved with the most important relic of Christianity? The answer is real simple. It seems that God always picks a Jew to be the messenger.
Yeah.
And I feel that my role is to bring this information to people without any spin or bias and allow them to make up their own minds. But to do so based on what we really know and not on the nonsense that gets published in the press.
That is excellent. I really respect that. Yeah.
And look, this isn't something I chose for myself.
Right.
Since I was a kid, I heard, we are the chosen people. I never felt very chosen.
Yeah.
But I do now. I really believe that this was my role. This was why I was on that team. So it had much less to do with making photographs in 1978, much more with bringing the factual information without too much spin or bias to the broader public for them to understand what we truly know about this piece of cloth.
Yeah.
And then it says on the first page of my website, given the facts, you can make up your own mind.
Right.
And that's all I want to do. I want to give people access to the same information that ultimately convinced me that the Shroud is authentic. I'd say that's, a reasonable thing to do, and a fair thing to do, and within the context of the role I played on that team, I was the documenting photographer. What was my job? To document the event.
Yeah.
That wasn't my only job. I did scientific work too, but my primary role was as documenting photographer. Well, I collected all the material. I have all the material. It's been sitting here for years. I was feeling guilty. They say Jews and Catholics always feel guilty about something. And I was feeling guilty that I had all this material, and it was just sitting in my safe, and I was going, well, I didn't go there for me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until years later when the website idea came along and I built the website that it became clear to me that all that information was, and all my skills and abilities in digital imaging and web and all that other stuff comes into play, and suddenly I'm the perfect guy for the job.
Yeah.
It's a job that I couldn't have even anticipated because there was no internet in 1978.
Yeah. Right.
So it's just one of those things where I personally believe this is the path I was put on, and this is where it led. And it's a good thing God doesn't let us see around the curve of the road.
Amen.
Because otherwise we might not do what we're supposed to.
Right.
And so he reveals to us as needed. And ultimately, I've learned now not to even try to look around the curve of the road. Just look down, keep your eye on the path, and stay on the path you've been put on.
Yeah.
And that'll get you where you need to go.
That's wisdom.
And not worry about what's around the curve. So it's modified my own perceptions of things and my own faith, believe it or not. And this might be a good place to kind of give you the ending thing because it's getting real close to
Okay.
Probably be on time. But anyway, look, I was raised in a Jewish home. My mother and father were both born in Poland, so I was raised in a very Orthodox Jewish home, old country style. My grandparents lived with us. God was a part of everything every day, but at about age 9, I began to see hypocrisy. I'm not a stupid guy. Even as a kid, I was perceptive, and I could see hypocritical things happening within my own religion. I don't like institutions too much. And so I was sort of offended by that, but I had promised my grandparents that I would have my bar mitzvah, which is the coming of age. 13, And the next next day I was finished with Judaism and didn't look back and didn't want to have anything to do with religion or anything like it until I was 48 years old.
Oh, man.
When I built the website and took a public stand on the Shroud for the first time in my life, publicly,
Yeah.
the questions immediately changed and everybody said, okay, so what do you believe? And I knew what they meant. They didn't mean about the Shroud. They meant about God.
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue what I believed. So because of that, I was forced, in my need to be honest with people and give them an honest answer, I felt that the only way to give them a correct answer was to open my heart and look inside and find out what do I believe.
Yeah.
And nobody was more surprised than I was to do that and find God had been there all along. I was raised, you know, it was part of everything every day.
Yeah.
In an Orthodox home, like in a good Catholic home, you know, you go to Mass, you pray the Rosary, you do the things that you do that are part of your faith.
Right.
And in the Jewish tradition, I did all that. I participated in all that, and that was all embedded in me.
Yeah.
But I was sort of oblivious to it until I looked, and nobody was more surprised than I was to find God inside me all along. And I knew He'd been there all along when I found Him. And so I'm not a Messianic Jew. It means sadly to some of my Christian and particularly evangelical friends, I don't know if Jesus was a Messiah or not. I don't know. And that's an honest answer. That's not a made-up answer.
Gotcha.
Look, I don't know. But it's not essential that I be a Christian to do what I'm doing. As a matter of fact, the reason I've been so successful is because I'm not.
Right. Yeah.
That's what gives me credibility.
Exactly.
The skeptics were being willing to debate with me because they know they can't use their usual BS line of, oh, of course you're going to say that, you're a Christian.
Right, exactly.
They can't say that to me. So they'd rather not debate me, and they now turn down debates against Barrie Schwortz because, oh, well, we can't use our ammunition on him. He's not a Christian.
Oh.
So it's kind of ironic that I find myself in this position.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm up to the task. I recognize the value of it to so many millions of people out there. So it's not about me, and it's not about what I believe, at least not from a spiritual point of view.
Right.
It's more about the facts and giving people access to them so they don't have to contend with all the noise and nonsense.
Right.
And they'll learn what we know about the Shroud, and then they can decide if it means something to them or not.
Yeah.
And that's as it should be.
Right.
The answer is not on that piece of cloth. The answer to the question of what it means, it's not on the cloth. It's in the eye and the heart of the beholder.
Yeah.
That's where the real Spirit of God lives. It doesn't live on a piece of cloth.
Right.
It lives in our hearts. And I think that's the answer. And the Shroud makes us consider these things.
Right.
And it's brought many people to God. And a lot of people have looked at it and gone, it means nothing, moved on.
Right.
And that's fine too. Everybody's got to find their own path to God. And everybody's path is a little different than everybody else's. And, you know, each of us has to open our own hearts to God. God doesn't force His way in. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You have to let Him in. And since you are going to is it a Catholic school or a Christian?
It would be Protestant, yeah.
Protestant, okay.
Yep.
Well, you know that many Protestants are not interested in the Shroud because they believe the Shroud violates the second commandment.
Right, yeah.
Thou shalt have no false gods before me.
Right.
Well, I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I think that'll probably be about the last of our time.
Okay.
I was in Auckland, New Zealand.
Yeah.
Opening an exhibit of the Shroud there in Auckland. And on the first day of the exhibit, I was there all day, you know, and people were coming through, and I was answering their questions when they came out of it. Two men walked up to me and in regular clothes, and one guy said to me, Mr. Schwortz, points over his shoulder to one of my life-size photos we were standing in front of, and he says, does this violate the second commandment? And first thing, second commandment? What's the second commandment? I had to think for a minute, and then I remembered, thou shalt have no false gods before me.
Right.
And I thought about it for a moment, and I said, well, sir, if the Shroud were a painting or a photograph or somehow were manufactured by the hand of man to fool us or to be a hoax, then I could understand people worshiping something that might be considered a false idol. And I would say, you know, then maybe in those circumstances, that would then qualify the Shroud as a graven image. However, the Shroud shroud was not painted. The shroud was not made by photographs. The shroud was made by some natural interaction, or perhaps supernatural. I don't know. It might have been supernatural. Who knows? But some interaction between a cloth and a body, which means the image on the shroud was formed by God's rules, not man's rules.
Right.
And consequently, it violates no commandments. Well, this guy got all excited. He said, "What a brilliant answer! Brilliant, brilliant!" And then his friend says to me, "Do you know who this man is?" And I said, "I have no idea. I'd never been to Auckland. I hadn't been to Auckland in 35 years, and I didn't know who this guy was. He wasn't wearing any particular, he was just wearing regular clothes." So I said, "No, I don't know who your friend is. Who is your friend?" And he goes, "He's the Anglican Bishop of Wellington." So now here I am, a Jew, lecturing a bishop on theology. And I start apologizing to the guy. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Bishop." And he goes, "Hey," he says, "relax." He says, "That was a brilliant answer. I'm going to remember that myself." So I'm telling you the story because that anecdote, when I'm speaking to a non-Catholic Christian group, Protestants, basically, I know that Protestants find that have a great problem with any kind of relics or icons.
Yeah.
The difference being, if you go to church, you have a crucifix on the wall above the altar. In a Catholic church, it's a corpus. It's got the cross and the body of Jesus on it. Protestants don't do that because all religions had a rule against depicting God. The Catholics changed that rule somewhere around 1,000 years ago. So I can and remember there was a rift between Catholics and Protestants.
Oh, yes.
Luther and all that stuff, I'm sure you were aware of.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, this is one of the issues that Luther had a problem with.
Right.
And so I tell that story about this bishop to my Christian non-Catholic audiences to address the question that often they're afraid to ask, or they don't want to bring it up, or they don't want to challenge me, and they feel that I'm the guest speaker, so they should just shut up and listen. But look, I want people to discuss this. I want them to think about it, and I don't mind answering the tougher questions.
Yeah.
So as someone who's Protestant yourself, understand that many people that practice the Christianity from a Protestant point of view are object to the shroud just for that reason, that they believe this is some sort of graven image. But it's not, because man didn't make the shroud. So there you go. Isn't that a good thing to end it up on?
That is excellent. Yes.
And this way, you've got enough ammunition to work for a while.
Right.
Once you've got the site up to a point where you want me to look at it, send me the link.
All right.
And if you have any further questions, let me know, and we'll do another one of these. Now, your phone bill isn't getting killed by this, is it?
I don't think it's too bad.
No, okay, because here's the deal.
Yeah.
You're a student, you're young.
Yes.
I have unlimited long distance, so if it's costing you an arm and a leg to talk to me on the phone, let me know and give me a number, and if you need to talk to me again, I'm happy to call you. It doesn't cost me any extra.
Okay.
Okay, and that way I'll spare you the cost, because I'm imagine you probably don't have a lot of money. You're a student. You're young.
Yeah.
You're probably too busy to have a job.
Right.
And, so your parents, out of, my gratitude to your parents for allowing you to do this, but it really is a good thing for you to do, and I think your parents, I'm sure they understand that.
Yeah.
That for you to do these kind of interviews with somebody who's got the information and who's been there is going to make whatever you do a lot more accurate, credible, and valid than if you're just making it up,
Right. They've always been really supportive of this sort of stuff.
Well, and that's good, and you can pass to them my thanks for, their consideration. Because, look, my hope is this inspires you. And look, if you turn out a killer website, I might just make a link to it.
Oh, really?
Well,
excellent.
It's going to have some merit.
Some stuff, right. I will definitely.
Well, there's a UPS truck just pulled into my driveway, and it's
really?
Into the snow. I knew I was getting a package today. So.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, look, Cameron, that's a good start.
Yes, definitely.
If you need more, if you have other questions, this is easier for me than trying to write emails. This would have taken 25 emails.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's why I always say by phone is better for me. And most people like it. Now you've recorded it all. It's a whole lot easier.
Right.
And I haven't had to write all this. It would have taken
forever.
Right,
exactly.
So, anyway, well, look, I'm going to go because he's coming up the steps with my package.
All right. Okay, well, thank you so much. I just really appreciate this, and this has been great.
All right, my friend.
All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.